Hello and welcome. I am Raziel, and so today's video is about Mantic. I haven't talked about Mantic. I need to talk about Mantic more. I've made a couple of videos, but I really do need to talk about them more because it's a fascinating company. They have fascinating lore. I love the firefight lore. I like the idea that it's not a galactic empire. It's a galactic corporation more than anything else. I like the Kings of War. It's a very old school fantasy style game with a fantasy style setting. It's got all the tropes which comes with that, but done in a way that makes it their own, and it's not actually so generic that you could just do it anyway. But it's very much their own thing, though being very good fantasy. It's in a kind of weird place where it's its own thing while keeping to the norms of the fantasy genre. It's kind of cool. I really do like that. Things like the abyssal dwarves and dwarves. They are dwarves and they look like dwarves, and a lot of their story is like dwarves. But there's so many little changes which makes them mantics, dwarves, and abyssal dwarves. It makes them their own. Same with like the humans. They're humans and they fit the fantasy trope of humans, but Mantic have made it their own. And I think that's really good. That's a really good move for a company to do when it comes to fantasy. It is a very generic setting at the moment. It's very hard to break free from it. It's a very old literature genre because it kind of dates back to the Norse times, which means it's so part of our culture that breaking so much away from it kind of feels unnatural. It feels weird. But you got to make it your own at the same time. World of Warcraft did exactly the same thing. It's a fantasy world, but they made it their own with some steampunk and stuff like that. And the same with like the Kings of War. They've made fantasy their own with some mechanical beasts, big monsters which are their own. Change little things about the fantasy world which makes it theirs, which I think is fantastic. I think it's one of the best things about it. Now, one of my favourite things about Mantic is, believe it or not, is the simplification of their miniatures. Now, are they technically better than Games Workshop? No, they're not. Objectively, I think they are superior. They have a charm to them. I've said this time and time before. They have this feel and charm to them, which Games Workshop can't really achieve, and I don't know why. I thought it was digital printing, but then I realised it's not, because Warcradle kind of disproves that, because the same love and passion is in their models and they use the same sort of thing. They use digital print, sculpting. So I don't think it's that. But what I realised what it is this simplification of the models. They are very, very basic. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I think it's a fantastic thing for a war game such as Kings of War to be like. When it comes to skirmish games, more detail and, is a lot better, because you're building a smaller army, or a smaller faction. You don't need that many, so you want the best looking models on the box, on your on the table, because it's a skirmish game, so not painting too many. Whereas it comes to a massive tabletop game such as Kings of War and the Old World or Age of Sigmar, Firefight, any of that, then you kind of want to dial back the detail on your average miniature. And the more in special the miniature unit is, you add that little bit more detail until you get to your main character, and he will be, or she'll be, whatever, they will be the most detailed, so they can stand out as a centerpiece for your army. And I think that's a good thing. I'm doing half things at the moment because they're kind of cool, and I actually think they're kind of fun to paint. And when something's nice and simple to paint and not overly detailed, you can kind of just breeze through painting them, and you can take your time painting a whole unit, making the whole unit look good, rather than the individual miniature. And that's why I'm not a big fan of super detailed miniatures in these big tabletop games. I'm not ragging on Games Workshop, but I do have to kind of use them as a point here with their Chaos Space Marines. Their Chaos Space Marine infantry is basically the normal legionnaires, are so detailed that by the time you've painted your 5th or 6th one, it starts becoming a drag, because you've got to spend so much time on an individual in the unit that it just ends up kind of a chore to finish painting them. And whereas if with Kings of War, even the most detailed ones are fairly simple, like the Terrors of the Nightkin. I think the Nightkin, I think they are. Oh, Night Stalkers, that's the one. And even though they're super detailed, but the way the detail is done, it's not a drag to paint it because it can be easily achieved with a wash. Because it's usually on one piece, which will be all the same colour anyway, and you can just wash it to get into the grooves, or contrast paints, whatever you want. But it's still a pretty easy model to paint, and you just fill out the little bits of details like the teeth and the eyes. Whereas when you get to the bigger models, the more advanced models, like I said, the named characters, that's when you start having to more and more detail, because again, that's your centerpiece of your model. And simplified models and more dialed back models, I'm not saying have no detail, detail enough, you end up being able to go through an entire unit very quickly, and you end up having a good looking unit very quickly because you're practicing brush techniques, you're practicing colours, washing, dry brushing on these models, and you don't even realise that you're improving because you are. And by the time you get to your main character, you've got all these brand new skills by painting the same block colours very simply. You've advanced yourself through practice without realising you've advanced yourself. And so you'll end up making your main character look even better because he is going to be better now because you've just done that. And this, where you just need 3 colours on each model, right? But you've done these 3 colours so many times and you've worked out how to make them look the best, how to make them look the greatest, and how to make them really shine on these simple models where, mistakes aren't such a problem. But when it comes, like I said, because you can really work on it because you've improved yourself. And that's the other thing. The fact that they are simple and you only need like 3 or 4 colours and you wash them and you do all that, you get good looking models very quickly. So you feel great because you've accomplished a unit in a very short amount of time and you've improved with every step. And you can sometimes, if you're like me, not a very good painter, and you see them from the first one to the last one, you'll see such an improvement in just those 10 models because of their simplicity. And that's why it's so good, because you'll actually see the improvement, almost a step-by-step improvement on each one. And then when you go to a more specialised unit, such as the cavalry in the halflings, again the same thing will happen. The first one will look, probably to your quality, and then by the time you've hit your 5th one, you've practiced so much on the individual colours, but by the time you've hit the 5th one, it's going to look so much better than the first one. And that's one thing about simplified models. Whereas when you have a highly detailed model as an infantry, your first one's going to look like your last one because it's become such a drag doing all the detail. You're not really practicing anything. You're getting trying too much to get the detail right before you're practicing the paint schemes and the colours and everything else. So that is one of my favourite things about Mantic. It's actually probably my biggest favourite thing, and I think it's a good thing when models are simplified. Like I said, not to the degree that there's no detail at all, but just enough detail to show you what it is, and you can practice on the colours. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a good day. If you wish to save money on your Warhammer, or even your Mantic, we have Mantic there as well. That's where I got the Kings of War box. It was like 65 quid. Unbelievable price. But one of the starter box. Quick heads up, if you do get the starter sets, you've got to buy dice too. Mantic, give them dice. Jeez, put the dice in the box. It's probably the most important part you need. And anyway, then you get, and free delivery after £20 in Whaling Games. Links down below. There is also Forbidden Planet for comics, movie stuff, all that really nice, sweet stuff that everyone likes, geeky merchandise. There is Skyforge. Guy's a friend. Give him a click. Give him some love, and check out his Pokemon cards. There is my merchandise, cups, t-shirts, notebooks, stickers, all the usual stuff. Art done by me. There's my comic as well. That's down below. It's an anthology. It's only a £5, by the way. And finally, Patreon, because business. Bye bye.